YouTube, it's Zoe, or Read by Zoe, and today I'm going to give some classic book recommendations just because I get asked all the time what my favorite classic books are, and if I have any recommendations for all of you, and I definitely do. I love classics. They are classics for a reason most of the time, and all of the books that I picked are pretty easy to read classic books, so if you are trying to get into classics, or if you're just looking for an easy classic to read, I have this video for all of you. The first recommendation I have is Jane Austen. This wouldn't be a Read by Zoe video without featuring some good old Jane Austen. She's my favorite classics writer. She speaks really clearly and she doesn't have these long, convoluted sentences. It's pretty straightforward and it's so hilarious. The two books that I'm going to recommend are Pride and Prejudice, my favorite book, and Emma. This is about Elizabeth Bennet, and she has 4 sisters and a very overbearing mother who wants to wed all of them off because it's the 1800s, the early 1800s, where a girl needs to get married. This rich man named Mr. Bingley and his even richer friend move into their neighborhood, and her mother definitely wants one of them to marry them. Most of her books are comedies of manners, which means that they make fun of all of the different social rules of especially the upper social classes, which most of her characters are pretty well off. Emma is about a main character named Emma, obviously, and she is spoiled. She has had everything go her way. She's used to ordering people around and them just doing it. She loves to meddle in people's lives, and especially she loves matchmaking. She loves setting 2 people up and making them get married, and she thinks it's just her purpose. There's consequences to all of her meddling, and there's a man. These 2 books are definitely romance heavy, but they're not all about romance. Like I said, it's a comedy of manners, and you learn all about their social classes in that time period, which is really interesting. And what I find amazing is that these situations are still pretty relevant today. The next book I'm going to recommend is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. This is definitely more of a modern classic. The main character is a teenager, and most of the characters are actually teenagers, so if you're into young adult, this is a really interesting place to start with your classics. The main character of this is named Ponyboy Curtis, a definitely interesting name, and he's part of a gang called the Greasers. There are 2 very big gangs in this area, the Greasers and the Socials, abbreviation of the Socials. So, the Socials? The Greasers are definitely the poorer gang, and the Socials, just listen to the name, Socials, they are the richer people. They have a great animosity between the 2, and they try and kill one another. It is very nerve-wracking to read sometimes because there is quite a lot of violence in this book. This was actually a very controversial book when it first came out. This book was a wild roller coaster of emotions when I read this last summer. I cried, I laughed, and I was on the edge of my seat. I was so nervous for a lot of things that happened in here. You really care about the characters even though they are part of a gang. They aren't doing great things, but they're decent people. This is also pretty short. I read it in one night, so if you want a quick and easy classic read, go for this one. Speaking of short, easy classic reads, the next book that I'm going to recommend is The Borrowers by Mary Norton. I read this last semester in my children's literature class, and I loved this, obviously, which is why I'm recommending it. This book focuses on a family of tiny people, or borrowers, who live in the walls of a very old house. And they borrow things from the family, things that they would never realize are missing, so they don't take like wedding rings or money or anything like that, but they take like a cube of sugar. The main character of this book is named Ariadne Clock. She is the child of Pod and Homily, and she wants to start borrowing. She wants to do what her dad does. She wants to go out into the house, but it is a dangerous job. If they figure out about the borrowers, things can go very badly. They could die. They probably would die if they're found out. Ariadne longs for the adventure. She wants to get out of the house that they have created. She wants to see the outside world. One of the things that I loved about this book is that there's so much imagery. Like I said, they steal little tiny things and they make their entire house out of these tiny things. There are some illustrations in my copy that give you an overview of what the house would look like, but just her words, you can visualize it. Like, their beds are made of matchboxes. This is a children's book, so this is so easy to read. The next book that I'm going to recommend is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. This one is much longer than the other books that I've recommended, but I love every single word of it. It is set in both London and Paris before and during the French Revolution. It focuses on a cast of different characters in the two cities. I really didn't know anything about the French Revolution when I first read this in 9th grade. I took European history in 10th grade, I believe, so I didn't know what was happening, but I learned a lot about it through this book. Obviously, there's a lot of politics in here, but there's also a lot of mystery and hidden meanings, and people turn out to be not who you think they are. It's a wild ride. Unlike the Jane Austen novels that I mentioned earlier that really idealizes that time period, Charles Dickens gets real. He shows you how life was for the lower class, whereas Jane Austen focuses on the upper middle to upper class. He shows you how real people lived and suffered during this time period, and you experience their agony, and it makes you think. And that's what I love about books. I love thinking. Next is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and this copy I actually had to annotate for class, and we were supposed to highlight our favorite parts or parts that we found interesting, and like the entire book is highlighted for me. This was written in and about the 1920s, which was a very different time in American history. People just were very excessive, and they thought that spending money that they didn't have was a good idea, but it wasn't. It focuses on a man named Nick Carraway who goes to Long Island to a little town named West Egg, where there are a bunch of very rich people who are living it up in the 1920s. He meets this mysterious young millionaire named Jay Gatsby who you don't know what he's doing. This book captures the essence of the 1920s, the roaring 20s, with its social upheaval and idealism and just excess everywhere. When you're reading this book, definitely look for symbolism because that's a big part of this book, and A Tale of Two Cities. There's a lot of symbolism in those two books, and keep an eye out for that because that will change your perspective on the books. Speaking of symbolism, the next book that I'm going to recommend is The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This book is about a little girl named Dorothy who gets stuck in a house with her dog named Toto during a tornado, and the tornado takes the house up and brings it to the world of Oz, where she meets a lot of strange people, the Tin Man, the Cowardly Lion, and the Scarecrow, and the Wicked Witch of the West, and she tries to find her way home without dying. This book is actually pretty violent, which I was not expecting, especially because it is a children's book and there was not a lot of violence in the movie. There was still violence, I mean, people died, but if you read the story about how the Tin Man became a Tin Man, that will kind of scar you. I like this book better than the adaptation though because we got to see more of the Wicked Witch. It's a really different experience watching it and reading it, so I recommend if you liked the movie, pick up this book. And the last book that I'm going to recommend is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. This is about a dystopian America where books are banned. They don't want anyone to think for themselves. There are these firemen, but not the firemen that we think of, that we have in our world. These firemen actually go out and burn the books. The main character, named Guy Montag, is actually one of these firemen, but then he has this new 17-year-old neighbor named Clarice who tells him about this past that they never learned of, where people could think of themselves and people could read books, and Guy Montag starts to change. This is the best dystopian book that I've ever read just because there is this entire world and there's a definite lesson to be learned. I love the writing. This was written in the 1950s, so it's modern language, it's really easy to understand, and you'll fly through it. It's another short book. So many short books. And then A Tale of Two Cities. So those were all of my classic book recommendations. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you found a few classics that you might want to read. If you have any classic book recommendations that I didn't mention or I haven't even read, please leave them down below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to follow me on Goodreads, Instagram, and Twitter. I hope you have a great day and I'll talk to you all later. Bye!